Hello, all you positive heads out there. Brandon Beecham here. As always, thanks for joining us. We have a stellar show in store for you on this week's episode. I'm particularly excited to dive into our discussion because I have Jonah Haas here with me, and Jonah is a co-founder of my very favorite California-based transformational music and art event, Lucidity Festival. Hello, Jonah. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Brandon. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. I've been very much looking forward to picking your brain for an hour or so this evening, and kind of finding out what makes it tick and what's going on with Lucidity. And more importantly, a lot of my listeners, of course, go to festivals and so forth, especially if they're here located on the West Coast. But as you know, it's really a fledgling movement in the grand scheme of things. So I think the best place to kind of jump off would be for you to tell us a little bit about what differentiates a festival like Lucidity from a typical music or art festival that people are familiar with.
Sure. I think the first time I heard the phrase transformational festival was through a TED talk that Jeet K. Luang gave probably in 2011 or 2012. And that's a great resource for anybody who's interested in learning about transformational festivals. But through that TED Talk and through his work with the Bloom series, which is an online documentary series that he went on to create, and through our own explorations in production, I've come to understand that the distinction between a transformational festival and a regular old festival really comes down to the intentions behind the producers and the vision that's sort of guiding the event. And so at Lucidity, we have 7 core values, and those inform everything that we do. Those core values are participation and immersion in the artistic process, awaken aware consciousness, personal growth and global healing, family fun and creative play, communal reciprocity, transparency. And so these are sort of, these are our core values as Lucidity, but they're also common threads that you'll see through other transformational festivals, really.
Right.
Immersive experience, awaken aware consciousness, some level of environmental responsibility or sustainability. These things are all sort of keystones.
How did you originally develop these core values? Is this something where you and your fellow co-founders kind of sat around and brainstormed, or are these something that were pre-existing values that you had seen in other festivals, or?
It was more than just the co-founders. We actually put out a wide community call to our arts community here in Santa Barbara. Before we even had the name Lucidity, we had been talking about doing a festival together, and a bunch of us came together to create a Burning Man art installation back in 2011, which was called Walkabout Woods. And it was during that time that we started talking about doing a festival. And so we put out a call to the community. So we said, come together and let's brainstorm a bit about the values and the vision behind what we're going to create. So we put out a prompt of a question, which was, what are the values that are going to form the foundation of that which we co-create together? And then wrote down the answers on little sticky notes and put them up on the wall and let the popcorn pop until it was done popping. And we had probably like 150 values up on this wall. And then everybody got up and we did a pile sorting exercise. So everyone was able to unstick the sticky notes and put them in like piles. And then it was the things that we identified that created the distinctions of the piles. Those were our core values.
Very nice. That's an interesting process, and certainly makes a lot of sense given the context of the type of event that you throw. So, as far as achieving those values, I mean, is that something that you feel like you've been able to successfully do, or is there some that, you feel have really been easier to accomplish than others?
It's an ever unfolding journey for sure. And,
Sure.
There's certain things that we do our best. Environmental sustainability, like when you get 3,000 people together on 40 acres, there's something inherently unsustainable about that.
Yeah, you guys pack them in for sure.
Yeah. But at the same time, we're doing our best to be more sustainable than other events that might be doing a similar capacity on a similar piece of property. All sorts of things like using reusable dishes, to our end single use campaign with our map data. Instead of printing up thousands of event schedules and maps, we print our event map on a bandana that everybody gets to take home as a keepsake, and it lives on in the world for years.
Those are great.
Yeah. And, we had a permaculture action course in the days leading up to the festival this year. So really gave people 3 days to immerse themselves in permaculture design principles, great educational opportunity. And then that carried into a permaculture action day on the day before the festival started down in Santa Barbara, which had probably about 100 people show up, and the Polish ambassador was involved, who was one of our headlining DJs who really promotes
he's big into that, right?
Yeah, totally. And then we had a permaculture hub as part of our Lucid University on site that hosted talks and workshops and hands-on cob building demonstrations and stuff like that. So
that's great.
Those are some of the things that we do around the one core value of environmental responsibility. And then, each of our core values I could unpack for, 10 minutes.
Absolutely. Well, that's a big one. I mean, it's such an interesting dynamic when you think about the typical festival. And I can think back going to festivals, over the years, especially in my younger days where, the Lollapalooza and things like that, where it's just beer, cups everywhere and trash everywhere. And although, as I mentioned earlier, 40 acres and 3,000 people at the Live Oak Campground where Lucidity is hosted, beautiful place that you've chosen, by the way. It's you've got a lot of people there, but the thing that people who've never been to one of these festivals, I think, would be shocked by is how much respect there is for the land and how little trash, even compared to some of the other, similar festivals like, I was at Lightning in a Bottle Festival a few weeks ago, and it was great in so many ways. But one thing that was really disappointing to see was trash strewn around. And that's something that I've never, I've been to 3 of your events, the last 3 Lucidities. And I've never seen that. It always seems to be very clean and everyone has the utmost respect. And I think that's awesome. So you've definitely achieved something unique with that core value. And of course, it shows your commitment to it. The fact that you guys, have these, action day before the event even starts to help the local community and so forth. So I definitely applaud you on that. It's very admirable.
Yeah, one of our producers said that his highlight moment was after the Polish ambassador's set on Sunday night. He was up on stage and he looked out across the crowd, and as the crowd dispersed, there was not a single piece of trash on that
Isn't that
main
incredible
dance floor. Which is, like even the distinction between this year and last year. Last year, after our headliner Tipper, there was definitely trash all over the place. And, we get moopers go in there and pick it up real quick. But
explain what mooper is to people who have never heard that term.
Moop is a term that we have Burning Man to thank for.
Right.
It is an acronym for matter out of place.
Right.
And so litter is obviously trash is that's strewn about is obviously matter out of place. But it can refer to other things that aren't necessarily trash. It's just something that's not in the place where it's supposed to be.
Right, right. So one of the interesting things also about Lucidity Festival is, and you mentioned it, I believe I was reviewing your About Us the other day in section on the website, which, by the way, everyone, is lucidityfestival.com. That's correct, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, just making sure I didn't say the wrong one. Send you to some weird website that is not you. Although I don't think there's probably too many other Lucidity festivals out there either. So one of the things that you mentioned is open source, it being an open source event. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. That basically refers to the fact that we invite people to bring their artistic genius and their gifts with them when they come to the festival. And so, we like to blur the line between performer and audience. And so everybody who comes to Lucidity is instead a participant. And a lot of the magic that you feel when you're at Lucidity isn't necessarily content that we've curated, but it's people bringing their own stuff and making the experience awesome for everyone. Right.
Yeah, that's the thing, when much in the fashion, of course, of like Burning Man Festival,
exactly.
Which I think you would probably agree is safe to say is the founding father or inspiration behind a lot of these festivals, right? For those of you who have never attended a festival like this, it's just such a different experience when the people who are attending the festival are, invited to create art or create some sort of contributing piece or factor to add to the experience. It's such a different dynamic, because not only do these guys like Jonah and his team get better and better at what they're doing every year with what they bring in the foundation that they set, but you also have the people, who are attending getting better at determining what they want to contribute and how they want to play a part in the community. And so it's one of these things where, every year it just gets more and more spectacular. So it's definitely a key difference between what you guys are doing and, of course, the typical festival as well.
I just want to jump in and share an experience that I had this year, because this is the first time I experienced something like this at Lucidity. Was 100 people dressed up like bumblebees came along and swarmed around me and stung me with their love stingers. And that was definitely not anything that we curated.
Yeah. And that definitely leaves something to the imagination. 100 love stingers. I don't know if you want to elaborate on that or not.
It wasn't anything naughty. It was, it was mostly just with sound and bzzz and vibration and pinches, and it was cute.
Very nice. Yeah, that's a great example of something that you probably could have never thought of or planned for yourself. But for 100 people to get together and do that, that's a lot of people to coordinate.
Yeah, I might be exaggerating a little bit. It was probably more like 45 or something. But still, it was a lot of bumblebees.
A lot of bumblebees. So you guys also, one of the great things about Lucidity in particular is the themed villages that you have. And I believe you have 7 or so of those. Is that correct?
Yeah, we have 7 themed villages that revolve around archetypes.
Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So our 7 themed villages revolve around archetypes, and each have a spirit animal that serves as the totem or the guardian, watching over each of them. So as you come in the festival, there's the Lover's Nest, and then the Trickster's Playground, the Warrior's Way, the Healer's Sanctuary, the Nomad's Nook, the Family Garden, and the Goddess Grove. And the idea is that each of these villages, they hold a particular type of energy. The Trickster's Playground obviously is a playful and mischievous energy. The healing sanctuary, that's where a lot of our healing workshops are, sound healing journeys, I am healing, massage, Reiki, and energy work tent, essential oil play shops, that sort of thing. And so as you're walking through the festival, you're going from sort of one zone to the next, and you can feel a shift in the vibration and the energy based upon who shows up in those zones, the content that's curated there, and the intentions of those people who come through. And it's really cool because, you know, we have all of these archetypal essences within us. And so just like if you've ever done dream work and you're like exploring a lucid dream, one of the things that like dream interpreters will tell you is that when you come across characters in your dreams, they're oftentimes reflections of yourself. And so to interpret your dream and who you interact with in your dream as not these separate, different characters, but instead as some aspect of yourself is a really profound way to find meaning from your dreams. And we've sort of created that at the festival grounds in our waking lives, because
That's
all
awesome.
of these archetypes exist within us, so we can walk through sort of like a waking lucid dream and experience all these different aspects of self. It's great.
That's really great. Yeah, I'm fond of saying, you know, wherever you go, you're there waiting for yourself. And it's essentially what you've done is, as you said, you know, it's all a reflection. All these archetypes are a reflection of you know, some part of your personality and so forth. And of course, there are going to be some that you are drawn to at particular times more than others, or that, you know, foster more of your, I guess, your dominant persona, so to speak. For example, my partner, Anna, this year, it was like, okay, you know, every year it turns into, when we go to festivals, a battle between camping with whatever group of friends I want to camp with, or her being close to the healing sanctuary. And I've several times over the last year, you know, she's kind of bent and went one direction and stayed where I want to stay. And she's been taking a lot of classes and just got Reiki certified and, you know, doing energy healing and so forth. And so this year at Lucidity, it was like, I am going to win. We are going to stay next to the healing sanctuary. And we did, and it was amazing. But you have a very distinct kind of vibe in that area as opposed to, you know, some of the other areas. So it's pretty cool because you're going to see people congregate maybe that have a dominant, you know, similar dominant, you know, need that they want fulfilled there, or experience rather that they want to have fulfilled, you know, while at the festival grounds. So I think that's really, really cool how you guys have done that as well. I mean, there's just so many elements to this. And I'm sure for someone who's never been to an event and hearing all the different components, they're thinking, wow, this is a whole nother level experience. And it really is. It's one of those things. And I think that's the key behind the word, you know, when you say transformational. And, you know, I saw an interview, I don't know, maybe 6 months or so ago with one of the founders of the Do Lab, who puts on some pretty big events, Lightning in a Bottle and so forth. And in that, I was kind of surprised to see him say that he doesn't like to refer to them as transformational events. You can have a transformational type of experience, but that's not necessarily, you know, a part of the deal. And with you guys, you know, and I love the fact that you actually say that's how you view it, because for me personally, I've had such magical, amazing experiences. I feel like these events are containers where you have a large group of people where the vibration is elevated, where, you know, you have a lot of people who are kind of on a certain similar consciousness level and vibration, very attuned to, you know, their higher self and, you know, the ultimate nature of reality and so forth. And our oneness, you know, at the end of the day, we're all, you know, like we just talked about, mirrors of each other. And for me, that's like the underlying most important factor of it all. So I really like the fact that you guys, and you can notice that difference, you know, really at Lucidity Festival, where it feels like that is an underlying important aspect.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you brought this up, because it's something that I'd love to address, because we definitely take some criticism on our social media and from people who write us emails from time to time, and the criticism, if I can sort of distill it down across a few different interactions, is something along the lines of, how dare you guys sell enlightenment, right? Or like, how dare you sell spirituality? And the thing about transformation, which is important, is that there's many different types of transformation, and some people might be coming to experience a transformation in their own consciousness, or a transformation in their relationship to spirit or self. But there's a handful of other different types of positive change that we're looking to hold space for, basically. Our relationship with money, and shifting the vibration of money from like fear and greed and lack to love and abundance and joy.
Sure.
Or our relationship to the concept of family, or changing our relationship to the planet, and our consciousness around waste, and so there's a lot of different types of change that we're encouraging, and it's not all about being sort of like hoity-toity.
Sure.
You have to come to our festival to learn how to be a good person, or you have to come to our festival to learn how to become enlightened.
Right.
It's means something different to everybody, and we hold space for that. So,
yeah, well said. For me, like I said, going to these events, there's this wonderful music and wonderful art, and so many cool, vendors and food options, healthy food options that you may not find other places. There's so many things to love and appreciate. But when I have some sort of an experience where there's a genuine connection, or, because I'm someone who is so inclined to, spiritual kind of matters and so forth, it's just been absolutely, there's been nothing even close to it in the default world, where I have so much opportunity to learn, as well as maybe share some bit of, insight or wisdom with someone who, showed up for the music, and they're 21 years old, and it's one of their first events, and they came to party, and, wow, all of a sudden I got, blindsided with all this love and unconditional acceptance from this thousands of people, and which curtailed into a conversation about spirituality and, those sorts of things. So when you share in that sort of experience, it's just, there's nothing better, I've found, that nothing more rewarding than to play some part in a conversation or a moment like that. And so it's, of course, you have the people who are going to criticize. It's always the ones who have something negative to say about it, who speak up loudest, right? But overall, I don't think there's any feeling whatsoever of it being, hoity-toity, like you said, or, we're the only path, or this is the way. I mean, it's very open-ended. You guys do such a great job of just creating the platform, and then letting, other people, come and fill it in with their art, or their wisdom, or their music, or whatever it may be. So.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad that that's been your experience. And that's most people's experience,
Yeah. Speaking of the music and the art, describe, once again, thinking of people who haven't primarily been to events like what you're throwing, and you guys are doing Lucidity currently on every spring, right?
Yes.
What type of music and art? How would you describe the music and art that is prevalent at your events and in events like yours?
Well, the music that we curate, we have 3 main stages, and we're looking to bring in a wide diversity of genres of music, but our Lucid stage is usually mid-tempo bass music. And then we have the Alive stage, which is multi-genre live music from bluegrass to funk to folk, hip-hop, devotional. And then we have the Nomad's Nook stage, which is more like house and techno and four on the floor, break beats type of stuff. Even a little bit of trap mixed in there. And then we have a ton of like smaller, I guess what we refer to as our village stages, smaller stages in the different villages, where there's like medicine music and singer-songwriter type stuff, acoustic, drum circles. Really, there's a little bit of everything mixed in. And so, yeah, that's the music. And everything is really, we're looking for music that uplifts.
Right.
You're not gonna find a lot of like dark and dreary.
Not a lot of death metal.
Yeah. And then art. We have Branches Mobile Gallery curates a visionary art gallery experience, and brings some amazing artists. This year we had Mark Henson on site, and last year Amanda Sage was with us, and just some of the best artists around showcase their work in Branches Mobile Gallery, and Branches actually gets around themselves to different events. So you might see them at like Once Upon a Festival coming up, or up at Sunset Campout. And they do a bunch of smaller local events around here. And so then there's a lot of interactive art installations, which usually tend to be participatory in some way. You can climb on them or swing from them or, write on them, something like that.
Right.
Very similar to Burning Man art.
Yeah.
But at Lucidity, it's just on a smaller scale.
Yeah, I remember this year you guys had a big dinosaur. I remember one point walking by, and it startling me when I saw it for the first time. It was pretty big. Very cool. And yeah, the interactive art is so fun because it's, one of those things where you've got to kind of figure out what is the purpose of this? How am I supposed to participate in experiencing this particular piece of art? And that's always just an absolute blast to do. And you had mentioned that you actually had participated in a large scale art installation at Burning Man. Is that kind of where you got your initial motivation for Lucidity? Was with that event and doing that art installation? You said it was Walkabout Woods. Is that?
Yeah, that's right. Walkabout Woods.
What was that?
We made these geometric, abstract plywood trees and painted them all different colors, mostly like purples and blues and reds. And we made something like 130 of them, but each one was made up of 3 panels and had to be painted on both sides. So all up, that was like 700 unique paintings.
Wow.
And it was totally collaborative. We probably had, 80 to 100 artists coming through that summer in 2011 at the warehouse space where we were building in downtown Santa Barbara, painting on trees. And we hid some fun things in the forest, and we had a 20-foot climbable pyramid and a burn barrel, and just really created a very cool experience where people could get lost and found in the woods. And there were all sorts of things that, unforetold things that would happen in the woods. And that was like our intention, was to create a space where magic could happen.
Beautiful. Was that your initial, participating in that project? Did that really inspire you to start the Lucidity Festival project?
Yeah, it was definitely the creative soup, or the creative cauldron where Lucidity came from. We were bringing the installation to a bunch of different festivals: Lightning in a Bottle, Burning Man, Escape from Wonderland, or something like that. And so it was in that journey that we really started talking about, well, we know a lot of people doing a lot of cool things in Santa Barbara, and we could probably produce a festival like this. And so in 2012, we just went for it. And the rest was history.
The rest is history in the making. Ongoing.
Yeah.
So the name, obviously, that's a unique name. I'm sure you get the question all the time. What inspired that? I'm assuming something to do with lucid dreaming. Elaborate on that.
As someone who is a lifelong lucid dreamer, my father talked to me about lucid dreaming when I was a kid, and he was reading the Castaneda books at that time, and my mom was super into transpersonal psychology, and so she was really supportive of a healthy dream practice. And so I grew up knowing about lucid dreaming, and then when I was probably 19 or 20, I started keeping a dream journal and really engaging with lucid dreaming as a personal practice. And when you start to embrace lucid dreaming and you wake up in your dreams.
Define that real quick for anyone who's not familiar.
Okay. Lucid dreaming is when you realize that you're dreaming while you're still in the dream.
Right.
So you basically wake up to the fact that you're dreaming while still in the dream. And what happens at that point, when you recognize the fact that you're dreaming while still in the dream, is, you can do anything you want.
Right.
You can let go of fear. You can shoot spaghetti from your fingertips. You can walk through walls. You can make things appear and disappear, and you use telekinesis skills, and there's all sorts of fun things that you can do. And so the idea was, well, what does it look like to bring that type of understanding of the world into our waking reality and into sort of the foundational thrust of a festival?
Right.
Opening to infinite possibility and letting go of fear being the main ones.
I love it. That's what a great premise and concept to build what you've built on, and no wonder it's created the success and beauty and dreams to reality kind of experience that it has. I have an interesting lucid dreaming experience. Well, not personally, where when I first started kind of opening up, having been raised in Virginia in a very conservative household, I was not exposed to much outside. Unlike yourself, my parents were not talking about lucid dreaming. They were talking a lot more about very conservative Christian values and things like that. So, about 20, 21 years old or so, and I talk about this some in one of my initial podcasts, I started really exploring all these other ideas. And one of the very first books that I read was called The Psychic Explorer, and it was all about a guy who would have out-of-body experiences, or astral projections, as they're oftentimes referred to, and it was his whole technique for how to do it, and how you can essentially, two ways he would talk about. You could become lucid in your dream and tell yourself, once you're laying there asleep and you realize, hold on, this bear isn't really chasing me through the woods. I'm laying in my bed and my name is Brandon and I'm asleep, right? And then you can take control of the dreams, as you kind of explained. So he said in this book, he talks about through becoming lucid in your dream, then you can tell yourself, once you become lucid, I want to leave my body, and you'll instantly leave your physical body and start having a astral projection or out-of-body experience, or through meditation with the other more difficult way to have an astral projection. And so I started explaining as I'm reading this to my brother, who's a couple years younger than me. And, of course, the same upbringing. And he's kind of laughing at me. He's like, Brandon, do you really think you can leave your body and have out-of-body experiences? And, just kind of like making fun of me, still very much entrenched in the thinking that we had been brought up to, to believe is how reality is structured. And out-of-body experiences was not a part of that. But during my conversation with him, he said, well, I don't believe you that you can leave your body. You're I don't know what you're smoking, but no, I doubt that's real. But that lucid dreaming thing you're talking about, that technique whereby to achieve it, I would have that sort of experience as a kid a lot, where I would become awake in my dream and do all kinds of cool things, kind of take control of the dream.
Yeah.
So he went from one day making fun of me about believing in out-of-body experiences and so forth, but acknowledging lucid dreaming is a real kind of phenomenon because he'd had it, to literally the next day coming down, waking me up in the morning, looking like he'd seen a ghost and saying, oh my gosh, you told me about this out-of-body experience thing. It made me remember, of course, having lucid dreams as a kid. This triggered me having a lucid dream again. And I told myself to leave my body like you told me with the technique to achieve this. And I left my body and I'm literally standing there staring at myself. I'm waving my arm in front of my face and I'm seeing trailers behind it and fly out the window. And, and so it was so funny because he's the type of guy who's really, really sensitive to energy and things like this, but he's not first in line to go do it. It just kind of, even through his whole, adult life, he's had a lot of really interesting experiences and he's not really seeking them out. But ever since that time, he's had some incredible out-of-body experiences. And it's a really great case because he's not someone who really believed it was possible, nor was he seeking to try and, figure it out. Whereas I'm trying to my hardest to become lucid in my dream, not successful doing it, trying to meditate to achieve an out-of-body experience, not really successful in doing it. So go figure. But so that's a cool lucid dreaming experience that I personally have, in my own life, or vicariously through my brother, I guess you could say. And there's actually a movie you're probably... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, since then, have you been successful?
I haven't, and Jonah, it's not something that I've really focused a lot of attention on. I haven't set the intention or, I tried a lot in those early years. And since then, I'm one of those people, I sleep really heavily. I don't even remember my dreams a whole lot. If I do, they're certainly not lucid. So I hope to change all that. Maybe this conversation will be the spark that makes that happen because, for people that do experience them regularly, it seems like such a phenomenal, experience.
Well, so for someone who doesn't regularly remember their dreams, like yourself, if you work on your recall first, that will lay the foundation for the possibility of, keeping a dream journal is the number one most important practice for a healthy dream practice. And writing your dreams down first thing in the morning before you even roll over, because you lose them so quickly. Our dreams are stored in our short-term memory. And that's why if we don't do something right off the bat, first thing in the morning, to log them into our long-term memory, then that's why they flee so easily. And it's hard for us to remember them.
Interesting. Yeah, I've heard that. And I really, honestly, it's a combination, to be perfectly honest, of being lazy and not remembering my dreams that often. But, I'm also someone who's a very firm believer in if you set the intention and set the wheels in motion, then things start to kind of happen. And so it's maybe, I actually have a journal that I've had for some time that I haven't really used. And so I'm going to take this as a prompt to start using it. So tomorrow morning, if I remember my dream, you can check in with me and see if I followed through or not. But I'm going to start doing it and see if I can have the experience, because it seems, from what I hear, it's just as real as your waking consciousness sometimes, where it's so vivid and lucid. And so you can imagine why people would want to have that experience, right? Where you can have
Well,
complete
also
control.
we dream for 5 years of our lives, and so
Oh, wow.
if
That's a
you're
great
not
point.
remembering them and you're not, um, you know, working in that space, then that's 5 years of your life that you're basically handing over to the void of unconsciousness.
That's a
But
great
if you
point.
bring consciousness into that space, then that's 5 years of life that you get to not just experience, but have some of the most amazing adventures and, mind-bending explorations that you can imagine. And I have a suggestion for you
Yes,
for
please.
people who are lazy and not really interested in writing all of. I'm using your words, lazy. I'm not calling you
Right.
lazy,
I know.
but
I got you. No, I owned up to it, so it's good.
for people who don't really feel like writing their dreams totally out in the morning, they have to get up, they have to go to work. There's like the things of their day are pressing on them. The thing that I suggest is, at the very least, write down the title of a dream.
Right.
Or if you don't remember anything at all, but the one thing that you remember was like one image, or maybe you remember just a feeling, write that down. Write anything down in the morning that
Interesting.
relates to your time that you were asleep, because it gets you into the habit of doing that. And anything that you start to habituate, like any practice, it gets easier. So
Sure. That's a great piece of advice. I think that almost sounds like a lazy man's approach to getting started. So that makes it even a little bit easier. So there's a movie, Waking Life. I'm assuming you're probably familiar with, which,
yeah, it's great.
have you seen that movie? Such a great movie. I recommend that to people where it's, a lucid dream kind of experience. And there's a point where they actually talk about techniques as well. Like I think I remember one technique where he talks about flipping a light switch, or, you can check, if you check light switches during your daily life and they go off and on, you're awake. And if you get in that habit, then, you may do, that habit will carry forward into your dream state. You flip the light switch, you realize the light didn't go on and off like it's supposed to in the real world. And that acts as a trigger to tell you you're in a lucid dream, so to speak. So,
yeah, what that is it's an example of a reality test. And having a go-to reality test is definitely a very important part of starting to have regular lucid dreams. And the key piece to the reality test, there's a few different types of reality tests that you can do, but the key piece is actually having the conscious thought, am I dreaming right now?
right.
And then when you have that conscious thought, am I possibly dreaming right now? Then there's something that you do that tests whether or not you're dreaming. So Carlos Castaneda talked about looking at your hands. And for some weird reason, when you look at your hands in a dream, it's hard to focus on them. You'll have 3 fingers, and then you'll have 5, and then maybe it'll blur and look like a lobster claw or something.
Right. Always a giveaway when you turn into a lobster.
Yeah, totally.
Dead giveaway.
And so if you test your hands in that way, then and they do turn into a lobster claw or blur out or whatever, then you know that you're dreaming, and then you can embark on that conscious exploration of the lucid dream space. But there's other ones too. You mentioned the light switch one, which is a good one, but it's a little bit limiting because there might not be a light switch around. So thinking about things that you can do in any place.
Your hands should always be with you.
One thing that I like to do, yeah, your hands you've always got. Another thing that I like to do is trying to stick my finger through a wall or a solid surface. If you can stick your finger through it, then you're probably dreaming.
Cool.
And then the last one that the Lucidity Institute at Stanford University recommends is text rereading. If you read text in a dream and then you look away and you look back and it reads something different, then you're probably dreaming.
Cool.
But you don't want to have a reality test that that you wouldn't be able to test and fail. Like, you don't want to jump off a cliff as a reality test, because if
very bad
for
reality
whatever
test.
reason you're not dreaming, then you're going to have a problem.
That's a great point. Thank you for clearing that one up. I could just see the lawsuits pouring in from family members of people. Oh man.
I was just testing reality.
Oh man. That's really funny. So as far as Lucidity itself, now you're one of the co-founders. So I know you and I had spoke one time before when we had recently met, and you had mentioned something that I found as a business owner myself really interesting is kind of the structure of the way you guys have set things up. You have multiple co-founding partners, but then you've actually allowed people to vest ownership with sweat equity. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. We talk about a principle of duocracy, and a more familiar term for some people is meritocracy. I like both of them together, duocracy and meritocracy, because duocracy is about like how much you do, and then meritocracy is like the quality of what you do. And so in relationship to how people show up and give their, as you call, sweat equity, they are first invited and then able to vest ownership units in the company. And so over the years, we've slowly unpeeled ownership, and now we're at a point where there's, I think, 18 co-owners.
Wow.
And all at varying different levels of percent ownership in relationship to how long they've been around and at what tier of participation or engagement they fit into. And so, yeah, it's a pretty dynamic system.
Very cool. And do you find that to be challenging in any ways to have so many people involved, or is it something where, due to your kind of process and invitation kind of approach as to who can have that opportunity, is it something where you feel like it's went pretty smoothly? Because obviously that's a unique structure. So I'm personally pretty curious about, how it actually plays out for you, in real world terms.
Yeah. Yeah. Like anything, there's pros and cons. And, I feel like the pros are that you have a lot of people who feel like, this is my company. And so you have a lot of fuel, basically, and inspiration to participate, maybe when there's not necessarily compensation to do so, or we want to activate a team of people to go participate in some nonprofit benefit or something like that. Like, we have a large community that we're able to do things like that, and then also along with that, there, you have a diversity of perspectives, and so everybody brings some different piece, some different, gift and genius and medicine to the collective. And then, some of the cons is that you have a lot of cooks in the kitchen and a lot of voices, and but we've developed systems and facilitation tools and communication protocols for navigating through all of that stuff, and it's certainly been a journey.
Spectacular.
But overall, I think it's a good choice for us, because we're not just creating a business; we're creating a community project, and so it was important to us at the beginning to have that community value be interwoven into the very structure of what we were doing. And so this was our way of basically giving ownership of this community event over to the community slowly over time, in such a way that would allow those of us that started it to stay at the center and continue to guardian the vision, and still bring more people into the circle. So
Cool. Yeah. It speaks volumes about your intention. You're definitely backing up, practicing what you preach, so to speak, down to the very, most core aspects of a company, the ownership. So I think that's really, really cool. As marketing director, that's your role, your primary role, as far as the operational aspect of Lucidity Festivals, right? Have you seen a lot of organic growth with the transformational festival movement? I mean, since 2012 to now, this was your fourth Lucidity, right? So how has that changed the marketing? How, is it something whereas in the early days you were trying to explain to people what you're inviting them to or marketing to them, and now it's kind of taken a life of its own, so it makes your life a lot easier? Or what are your experiences with that? Now, do you just sleep in all day, every day, and let the people do the work for you, or is it?
Well, in terms of industry wide, or it's not even really industry wide. It's a niche of an industry. I would call transformational festivals. But
sure.
Across that landscape, I see a lot of saturation, especially on the West Coast. And in the summer, we're at a point now where every weekend there's like 2 or 3 festivals somewhere going on up or down the coast. And so, it's a really crowded landscape. And the cool thing is that it's proliferating out throughout the rest of the world. There's a big event in Costa Rica and Vision, and you've got Boom Festival in Portugal, and Rainbow Serpent in Australia, and this year Unifier was on the East Coast, and Gratify and Connection came out, and so you've got events now popping out all over the globe, which is awesome. But here in California, it's really crowded. So that's definitely something that I've seen in terms of organic growth. Is it's definitely been growing. I think my friend who is the editor of Festival Fire Festival Guide, she said from 2014 to 2015 she saw a doubling of new events. Wow. So. Yeah, so
that makes you like the veterans being 2012. I mean, I'm sure with the exponential growth, do you feel like there's exponential demand though as well?
That's a good question. I don't know. I think that what we see is, we see the festival industry and the festival market really growing at a fast rate. And so I think we'll come along with that, because as people go to the Coachellas or the EDCs or the big Insomniac events, I feel like there's sort of like a maturation of the festival goer, where they'll go to those larger type events and then they'll be interested in something that has a little bit more purpose, or they're interested in education and workshops in addition to their music.
A little less party.
And and so as people grow older, like I feel like we're multi-generational in terms of our audience. We have, we have young people, we have old people, and we have everything in between. But I would say the sort of mean age of a Lucidity person who comes to Lucidity is probably like 26 or so, which is different than what I would say the mean age of like a Coachella or a EDC. I would say that that's probably around 21 or 22.
Right. Interesting. That makes a lot of sense too when you talk about the maturation of people who, and I've certainly run across that a lot with people who started with events like EDC and so forth, which are much more similar in the fact that maybe there's electronic music, and there's a fair amount of electronic music, of course, at your event and others like it. Although it seems like there's kind of like a different intention behind some of the artist is one difference, and of course the artwork is very. You can certainly sense a lot of spirituality in the artwork that you see. So it seems to be, just in personal experience, people starting at events like that oftentimes, and then once they go to a transformational festival, it's kind of a game changer for them.
So here's, when we talk about marketing, here's one thing that we do at Lucidity that is, I don't see it at any other event anywhere, really. It's one thing that's very unique to Lucidity. And that is that we are telling a multi-year story on our website. It's described as our 6-year story. And basically within 6 years, we're telling this sort of grand meta-narrative of personal and collective transformation. And so each festival year is a different theme, and it can be conceptualized as a different chapter in this larger story. And so, like Burning Man's got a theme every year, but the themes don't necessarily talk to each other from one year to the next. And what we've done is we've learned from, great thinkers like Joseph Campbell and The Hero's Journey. And we've looked at the great epic, stories of our time, like Star Wars and The Lord of the Rings, and how those are organized into trilogies, and we broke our 6-year story down into 2 trilogies. And the first trilogy, the first 3 years, were about personal transformation, and the second trilogy, year 4, 5, and 6, are about collective transformation.
Cool.
And so year 1 was awaken your dreams, and so that was about personal awakening. Year 2 was the totem's return, and so that was a deeper exploration of self and an exploration of all of the different spirit animals and all the different archetypes that represent our villages, and delving deeper into who we are. Year 3 was universe, and that was about personal realization, so recognition and realization that we are all of those different aspects already, and that we are one with the universe and one with all that is. And then, so, that trajectory of personal awakening, exploration, and then realization, at that moment of realization of oneness with the all, we can rest in that forever, or we can come back down to earth and look around and realize that there's other people who are on similar paths. And so in year 4, 5, and 6, we start telling a tale of collective transformation, and we ask the question, how do we live in right relationship with ourselves, with others, and with the planet? And so year 4 was Kindred Quest. That's the festival that just happened. And that was learning from our human past. And then next year is Crossroads, and that's confronting our human present, and it's looking with honesty at all of the shit that's fucked up in our world. Excuse my language. But arriving with solutions. And then year 6 is our collective human future, and the name of that event is going to be called eudaimonia, which is a Greek word for human flourishing. And that's what we're co-writing together through the whole experience and the whole journey.
Well, no one could ever claim that you guys haven't thought things out thoroughly. That's really cool. So if I'm understanding correctly, then the 6th year will be the final Lucidity Festival as we know it.
Well, it's the final chapter in the perennial story, and so just like most heroes' journeys, it's circular. And so we arrive where we started, and there are always more journeys to take. And so we might start the 6-year story over again. There might be other 6-year stories that pop up in other places.
Right.
There we might tell a different story altogether. It's the end of one cycle, but the end of one cycle is always the beginning of another. So
I like that. I like that. So it's you've left it open to be determined by the course of life. I like that. That's good. That's good. Now you're also marketing director for another festival that's held up in Northern California, Enchanted Forest. Correct?
That's correct. Yep. And I've been delving into that right now. This morning I had a marketing call, and everything's revving up with that. So yeah, I'm into a next production cycle as we speak.
That one is actually, is that at the same I've never been to Enchanted Forest. I've heard great things. Is that at the same location as the Awaken gathering was a few years back?
The first 3 iterations of Enchanted Forest were at Camp Navarro, is what you're referring to.
That's right. That's right.
And then last year it was at Stone Bear outside of Tahoe. And this year it's going to be at the legendary Black Oak Ranch in Laytonville in Mendocino County. And so we're really excited for this year's venue. That's where Earth Dance used to do its thing for many years, and the venue for the Kate Wolf Festival. And back in the day, there was Grateful Dead and Wavy Gravy, and
cool.
There's a lot of awesome history there.
So Lucidity, folks, having just passed for 2015, Enchanted Forest is coming up in August. Is that correct?
Yes, the second weekend in August.
So for those of you listening who may have missed Lucidity, you certainly want to catch it next spring in 2016. But Enchanted Forest, obviously, with Jonah being involved in both, there's a similar vibe, I would say, from the things I've heard as well. So it's one that I'm going to try and see if I can make it up to. It's a little bit further than Lucidity is from where I live, but it's so beautiful up in that neck of the woods. And, you know, it sounds like, I don't know much about that venue, but it sounds like you sound excited about it. So that makes me excited.
Yeah, it's a great venue, and it's an amazing community up there. And Enchanted Forest is really endeavoring to be sort of like the premier conscious movement gathering in California. And so contact
Beautiful.
Improv and ecstatic dance and flow arts abound. And so if you're a dancer and you like to move your butt, that's a good place to go.
Oh, well, you know, then I better be there, because my dancing is like no other. So I may just grace you guys with my beautiful moves. So talk to me a little bit about the Re-inhabiting the Village project. That's another project that is closely related in some sense that you're involved with.
Yeah, awesome. You've done your homework. Re-inhabiting the Village is it's a multi genre hub space for community creatives, basically. The primary thing that's going to come out of that project is a book. It's a compilation of essays and shares from a variety of different people who are involved in creating community. So permaculture design, urban gardening, conscious festival production, communication and facilitation, these types of things, all of the different aspects of what does it mean to be in community and what does it take. There's going to be a workbook that has tools and templates and checklists and actual things for people who are calling in community or living in community. Will be functional for them. There's also going to be an ebook and an online web platform, and all of that is, I believe, set to be unveiled in July of this year. We did a successful Kickstarter campaign at the end of last year, and they've been deep in production and editing right now. And that's Jamaica Stevens is the author of that book, and then Keyframe Entertainment is the producer, and I'm proud to say that Lucidity is a associated producer on that project.
Very cool. Yeah, I remember when the Kickstarter campaign was launched, and I was really excited to see that it reached its goal. And so you say July there will be a book. Now, for someone who wasn't involved, they can still purchase the book or the ebook or what have you at the website?
Yeah, that'll all be announced. I'm sure that there will be a pathway for people to purchase the book who didn't at that time.
Okay. Gotcha.
I know that the initial run is going to be a short run, and so there's not going to be that many more than than what was pre-ordered, but the book will be available in digital form in the interim before another round is printed.
I see. Okay, cool. Well, I'm sure people who are interested in that sort of thing will stay tuned. And it's Re-inhabiting the Village, just to say the name again so people can kind of keep an eye out for it who are interested in. It sounds like essentially a much needed resource and kind of handbook for people who are looking into these sorts of, permanent village infrastructure projects and so forth. And I know that's something, Jonah, you and I had gotten into when we talked, when I met you face to face for the first time, not too long ago. And we talked a little bit about your other, as if you're not busy enough, your other intention of acquiring land and building some permanent structure on it and having, a small group of people to help create, sustainable community and so forth. Can you elaborate a little bit on that for me?
Yeah,
what your intentions are and so forth with that.
Yeah. This conversation is coming from the recognition and the experience of building these amazing temporary villages that exist in the world for like 3 days, and then we have to tear them down.
No.
And
I think people would be shocked if they could see, the people, sorry to interrupt, but I think people would be shocked that have not been to a festival like Lucidity and to see how magnificent the platform and infrastructure that you guys put together is. And then it's up for 3 or 4 days and all goes away. And it's like, oh my gosh, like, can't we live here? Can't we at least stay 2 weeks? So,
so that's that impulse of can't we make this a little bit more permanent? Can't we make this like a little bit more year round? And so what we're looking to do is we're looking to find a property where we can produce events like Lucidity or the size of Lucidity, but then we don't have to tear everything down. Maybe we have stage infrastructure that stays up for other events. Maybe one of the workshops is a cob building workshop, and the workshop is actually building a classroom or a shed or a cob oven that stays on the property and contributes for years to come. And so our vision is an event space and a community, and the community would double as a living demonstration site for regenerative human settlement design. And so we would be showcasing different types of housing, dwelling that's possible. Earthships, cob building, tiny houses, yurts, and then we are also dreaming into a maker space, so that there's a community that lives there year round, but then there's also the opportunity to house engineers in residence, artists in residence, healers in residence, who are working in the maker space and developing new technologies, which then we implement onto the property. And once again, they're showcased, so people who come in can see these technologies functioning, and then they can potentially be exported out to other places. The other things that we imagine happening on the property are retreats, healing and wellness, lucid dream retreats potentially. We imagine growing our own food, and
solar power, everything, I'm assuming, or as much as possible.
Yeah, that's the idea, is to utilize alternative energy as much as possible. And the idea is basically to create a community of solutions for the future.
Awesome.
Demonstrate what's possible.
Essentially, it would be like a prototype kind of community that you would like to see, try a little bit of trial and error on different things, and the things that work, push them forward and share them with as many people as possible in other communities. And I know when we spoke, you had mentioned the idea of, kind of being there being nodes that then, it branches out where they're collaborative and connected in one sense. And I really, I like that idea and that vision. And it's one that I think I had mentioned to you, Venus Project, which I think you're familiar with. They talk a little bit about, and I think it makes a lot of sense for, as we redefine the way we build our communities and so forth, to have them connected and using things locally, and realizing that this is a planet with limited resources. It's not, let's create something so that it'll break exactly like my partner has a computer. Anna has a computer. She bought it exactly a year ago. The keyboard completely died on the laptop. She takes it into Best Buy or wherever, and they say, oh yeah, they design it pretty much. So, this is like the norm with this particular one. It dies as soon as the warranty's up. So you get another one. And it's like, what are we doing that we design something intentionally to break down? Right. It's just crazy. And so, I applaud your vision, and it's one that I've talked about even, to you and in other podcasts, and to anyone who will listen, really, that I really resonate with the idea of, and it just seems like, what fun to actually take, find some land and say, okay, we're going to create something different with a different kind of underlying set of values and intentions. It's not as opposed to a competitive based environment, creating a collaborative based environment, one that's based off of there being enough and abundance and unconditional love for those around you. And it's a very exciting time. And I think, so many people are thinking about this sort of thing. And I think the fact that you guys are trying, you're actually out looking at land and so forth actively, right?
Yeah, we are. After I saw you this past weekend, we went to look at a property, which might not be the right fit for us, but we've been looking at a number of properties up and down the coast, and we're through the process have been dialing in exactly what it is that we're looking for. And there's a couple of possibilities of real potential. So now it's about dialing in the plan and finding the partners who are ready to share in this vision with us.
Beautiful. Well, it's all super exciting, and I look forward to seeing how it develops, and playing any role that I can in assisting and so forth. And I know there's probably no shortage of people who are interested in growing every day. It's an idea whose time has definitely come, I think. So it should be really interesting to look back on this podcast 10 years from now and see what what is, manifested in our waking dream. So,
yeah, that's right.
A couple other questions. This has been an awesome conversation, by the way. I really appreciate you taking the time, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it. And I know for a lot of people, it's really great to get an inside look of, inside the mind of someone putting on one of these events, and because there's so many people enjoying them, but don't know much beyond the exterior. And that's the other kind of the mysterious cool thing about what you guys do too. There's not all kinds of marketing and advertising on the festival grounds. For those of you who've never been to one, I mean, you guys it's all very quiet and you're not seeing Coca-Cola ads and you're not seeing Budweiser ads. It's, it's art. It's amazing people. And the people behind it are very humble about it and quiet about it. And it's really creates a different type of experience.
Yeah.
I always ask. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, we do have a sponsorship program, but we're very selective with who we bring in as sponsors. They have to be aligned with our core values. So
Marlboro?
It's just not, not the first person that shows up
not
with
big
a check.
Tobacco.
It's
yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. That obviously you're not opposed to it having someone come in and help support, because these things aren't free. But it's just, even if. It's something that I've never noticed any kind of marketing that I can think of in any transformational festival. So I don't know exactly how you guys would structure that sort of thing, but it's certainly not, because you think of like a typical big festival. You're going to the Verizon Amphitheater and, sponsored by Budweiser. And it's just, it's just in your face, the marketing. We're all so used to that. And, it's just not something that seems to be very prevalent. So,
yeah, well, we could do a good job of weaving it into the experience so that it doesn't feel like bash over your head.
Yeah, you definitely are doing a good job, because I'm not even aware of seeing anything. Or if it is being weaved in, it's being done so seamlessly and smoothly, and it seems so. Such a natural part of what it is that you're creating, which is that's how it should be, right? It's not something that's standing out like a sore thumb. So that's cool. So one thing that I always ask, and a big part that I like to addition that I like to bring to the podcast, is any stories of synchronicity or serendipity or positive paranormal happenings. And I'm assuming when I first talked to you about this interview, I just knew someone who was a co-founder of Lucidity Festival, and the magic that is that event had to have, because sometimes I'll talk to people and I'm like, look, I want to have these types of stories. It's not everyone has something that they, feel is worthy of sharing, or maybe I have had a few even who shared one who kind of wasn't, everything I was hoping for. In your case, I knew that there would be something worthy of sharing. So what do you got for me?
Okay.
No pressure with that intro, by the way.
No worries. Because you prompted me with this question, I was able to think about it a little bit. And it doesn't really have anything to do with the festival. It actually, this experience was like back in 2006. So festival production wasn't even a thought in my reality at this time. This was a time when I was in graduate school at UCSB. I was on a track to be a cultural anthropologist. I had plans to get a PhD and be a professor and do original research. And I got my master's, and I put a few years towards the PhD, and then I got hurt and I had to step away from school. And in that year stepping away, I realized that I wasn't actually on the path that I wanted to be on. But during the time that I was in graduate school, I got to have some incredible travel experiences that I wouldn't trade for anything. One of them was traveling to the Solomon Islands. And cool. The Solomon Islands are like northeast of Australia near Papua New Guinea. And I lived in a small village with a family for a couple of months. And this village was probably like 300 people and thatch roof huts. And, the only electricity was in a few spots in the village from generators. And these people still fished and farmed for their food. And it was really the most remote place I've ever traveled. And a totally different cultural context. And the history of this place was really interesting. I was on the Roviana Lagoon in the Western Solomon Islands, and in the Roviana Lagoon, this is where, like 150 years ago, up until 150 years ago, these were some of the fiercest headhunters in the world.
Oh, wow.
And
is this the place where they're shrunken? Is it Papua New Guinea where they do the shrunken heads and stuff as well? Or am I confusing?
Yeah, I'm not really sure about the shrunken heads. These people wouldn't shrink heads, but they would certainly hunt for the heads of their rivals. And so I share that just so you understand that there's a pretty violent and turbulent history in these islands, and then Methodism came in around the turn of the century and pacified the whole region, and so now the people are the most loving, delightful people ever, but there's this interesting history in what they refer to as time before.
Wow.
And there's a strong, it's not even a belief, it's an understanding that there are spirits everywhere. And there are spirits of their ancestors, and there are non-human spirits, and spirits are responsible for illness, and if you are successful at fishing, and all sorts of stuff. And so this was sort of a new concept for me, coming from the Western world, and I've been sort of indoctrinated in a scientific worldview, and so I was sort of skeptical of that, yet was trying to do my best to keep an open mind. And we were out fishing, and we were hand lining for kingfish and barracuda and some really big fish out there. But we were fishing for like 2 hours, and we hadn't caught anything, and so we were going around this island called Tombatuni, and I sort of was like gazing into the island as we're riding in the boat, and not catching anything, and I sort of get into a meditative state, and I don't know why I decided to do this, but it felt like a good idea at the time. I decided that I was going to communicate with the spirits, basically ask the spirits to show me some sign of them. And so, so I'm like gazing into the forest of Tombatuni, and I'm speaking to the spirits, and I'm saying, "Spirits, show me something. Show me your magic." And really, what I was intending in my heart of hearts, if I think back about it, I was intending for them to show me a sign of like a big fish biting onto the line and catching a big fish.
Right.
But so I say to myself, show me your magic. And the moment I say that in my head, this flock of bats flies out from the island. And I was like, oh, that was pretty cool. That was like exactly when I asked to be shown something. Right. A huge flock of bats fly out. But I was like, but that's, it's like a coincidence, it's not that big of a deal. So I said, spirits of Tombatuni, I was like, show me your magic and your power. And I think that might have been the wrong thing to ask for. Within 30 seconds, I'd say, of saying that it was a beautiful day up until that point. All of a sudden, this cloud formation comes in out of nowhere, and my professor who's driving the boat like is totally taken off guard, and he's like, "Oh my goodness, there's a squall coming in," and we're going back and forth around this island that's in the open ocean. So the majority of the villages are in this lagoon, which is protected by other islands. But this island that we were fishing on was out in open ocean, and we were out there because it was a nice day. But this squall was coming in, and he was like, "All right, reel in the lines. We gotta get back to the lagoon. You don't want to get caught in the open ocean in a storm." And so, he fires up the engine, and we start driving, and I'm going, "Whoa, this is crazy. This just rolled in out of nowhere exactly at the same time that I asked to be shown some power." And so we're going on the boat, and the boat's slamming down on the waves. The waves start to get pretty big, and the boat's slamming. And there's a field student who's on the boat in the front, and she's holding on for dear life, and her hand slips, and she goes airborne and crashes down onto the front of the deck face first, and comes up just a bloody mess, and there's blood all over the deck. And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, what is going on?" It's like it's kind of crazy. And I know that you said please share a positive paranormal experience, and so I'm getting there.
Okay, good.
So we get back to the village. He goes slower. This poor girl, she bit through her tongue. There's blood everywhere. She needs to be rushed to the health clinic to get stitches. And I'm just like swirling in my head, because from my experience, I kind of asked for all of that. And so I shared this with my professor, and I thought he was going to be like, "Oh, you're being silly. Don't worry about it." But instead I got a very different response, and he was like, "What the hell do you think you're doing?" He's like, you're an outsider around here. You don't talk to the spirits." He's like, "Oh, wow. You talk to the spirits in the wrong way, you might find yourself killed." He's like, "You need to watch what you're doing." And I was like, "Whoa." And so that weighed really heavily on me. And
I can imagine.
In a weird way, I felt responsible for this girl getting injured.
Yeah.
And so I went to bed with that. And the next day was a Sunday, and I got up and I was sort of mopey, and I didn't really know what to do with myself. And I decided to not go to my responsibilities with the field school, and instead I went to the locals, to their church, and I sat with them in service, and they were all really happy to see me there, and I took in their spiritual experience, and or their experience with connecting to spirit. And it was in that place that I sort of went back into a meditative state, and I asked for forgiveness. And I recognized that I was sort of naive and shouldn't have really meddled in this thing that I didn't understand. And so, please forgive me. And that was just sort of like something that I pulsed out there with my mind and my psyche. And I was welcome into a feast after the service, and people were really glad that I came and spent that time with them, because not a lot of the field students had done that. And so that felt really good. And I felt like I had sort of made my amends, so to speak.
Sure.
And so the next day, I was with another one of my buddies, and we had gone to town, and we're on our way back in the boat from town, and he looks at me and he goes, "You want to go fishing?" And I was like, "All right." And so he goes, "All right, well, let's go to Tombatuni." And so he turns the corner on this channel that points us directly out to the island where this had happened. And this is my first time looking at the island since that happened. And there's a giant rainbow directly over top of the entire island, just like, oh. And I was like, oh my goodness. It was like total validation that, that amends was like, I was forgiven.
Received.
And, totally received. And so we went out, and that day we caught a hell of a lot of fish.
Wow. That's awesome. What a great story. Very, very inspiring. It goes to show too, just whenever you bring that energy of humility and, hey, yeah, this is not very Western concepts or ideas, but I respect whatever it is. And yeah, maybe I don't understand. And it's really interesting. Just the fact that you, whatever it was, you started with a sort of an attitude of, yeah, come on, show me something. And then you got negative effects. And then you went to humility and, I don't understand it all, nor do I need to. I just want to be humble and respectful, and the difference that sort of energy brought in what you saw in your, around you physically, into what you caught, into everything. So that's a great story. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, no worries.
Well, Jonah, this has been a really great conversation. I was looking very forward to it, and you've been a wonderful guest. I do have one last question I like to leave everyone with, and that is very simply, to Jonah Haas, what is the meaning of life? And I'll give you a moment to think on that one. Yeah, that's all. No big deal. And hold on, one caveat. And try and bring that in under 60 seconds or less, if possible. But if you go over, we won't penalize you too much.
The meaning of life. I think the meaning of life is just to live well. I guess that's more of the purpose of life, but embracing family and and embracing love and good communication and having respect for all relations and being humble. And, all of these things are sort of like a way of living. They're not really the meaning of life. But I feel like through embracing these ways of being and these ways of living, then the meaning of life comes through. And I feel like the true meaning of life it's unspeakable. We can't really put it into language. It's an experience of the magic that is all of it, all of everything. We might experience it in a moment of meditation or in a lucid dream or maybe in a psychedelic experience, this realization of unity with all that is. It's really beyond it's beyond language.
Perfect. Well, that is as well said as you can say something, as you can describe something that's undescribable. So that's really good. I appreciate it. You letting me throw that one at you at the last second there. And Jonah, as I mentioned, it's been a real pleasure. I want to encourage anyone out there listening to do not miss Lucidity Festival. If you're intrigued by this, and some of you guys have been and love it and support it, and that's great. For those of you who haven't ever been to a transformational festival, will it be next April? April of 2016?
It's always the second weekend in April.
Always the second weekend in April. I highly, highly recommend it. And if you're looking for something sooner, you've got Enchanted Forest. And what is the dates on that?
The dates in that are August 14, 15, 16.
Okay. So, and that's in Northern California. So you can check that one out as well. And once again, Jonah, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me on this podcast. And I look forward to following up with you and, seeing how some of these projects develop and so forth in the coming months and years.
Yeah, thank you, Brandon. I really appreciate your good hosting and your challenging questions.
Well, you aced. If it were a test, you aced it. So well done, Jonah. Thanks so much, and I'll be talking to you soon, I'm sure.
All right, thanks so long.
Thanks, buddy. Okay, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning into this week's episode. Until next time, remember, as long as you ain't dead, you're already positive ahead. Take care, everyone.